My name is Brianna Collins. I am 28 years old, and I live in downtown Seattle, in a glass apartment that looks successful from the outside and exhausted on the inside. I work as the operations director and co founder of a small design and software company, the kind of job that makes people assume I am calm, organized, and in control. Most days I am. That is why no one expected me to lose my balance in a bridal boutique, staring at my reflection like it belonged to a stranger. I was trying on my wedding dress when my life split in half. The fabric was white, heavy, and expensive enough to make me nervous. A sales associate was adjusting a crystal crown on my head, explaining payment plans I barely heard. I was supposed to feel joy. Instead, my phone buzzed in my hand like a warning. The name on the screen was Lucas, my fiancé's executive assistant. He never called me directly unless something was wrong. Brianna, he said, and then stopped. That pause told me everything. Please come to the hospital, he continued. Ethan has been in an accident. It is complicated. My fingers went numb. The crown slipped from my hands and shattered against the floor. No one cared about the crown. I barely heard the gasps around me. All I could think was that Ethan Wright, the man I had loved for 3 loud, stubborn, unforgettable years, might never open his eyes again. And even if he did, I had already decided something terrifyingly simple. I would still marry him, even if he could not walk, even if he could not speak, even if he never remembered my name. By the time I reached the hospital, my heart was pounding so hard it felt violent. Lucas stood outside the room, pale and tense, repeating the same word over and over. Complicated. I pushed past him, ready to see blood, tubes, silence. What I saw instead was a woman crying. She sat outside Ethan's room, long hair falling over her shoulders, face delicate and devastated in a way that looked rehearsed. When she noticed me, she did not stop crying. She cried louder. She whispered his name like a prayer. She said things like, "He saved me," and "If only it had been me," instead. Then she looked at the closed door and said, "I am his first love." That was the moment I felt real fear, because Ethan had never told me he had a first love. I opened the door slowly, preparing myself for the kind of heartbreak people warn you about but never truly describe. I expected confusion. I expected distance. I expected him to look through me. What I did not expect was this. Ethan sat upright on the hospital bed, one hand gripping the bandage around his head, eyes sharp and furious. The moment the crying woman tried to touch him, he snapped. "I lost my memory," he said coldly. "Not my brain. Get away from me." The room went silent. I stood frozen in the doorway, suddenly understanding something that would change everything. Ethan Wright might have forgotten me, but he had not forgotten how to protect me. And that terrified everyone else far more than it terrified me. I stayed at the hospital that night, not because Ethan asked me to, but because leaving felt like surrender. The room smelled like disinfectant and quiet panic. Machines beeped softly, as if they were afraid to interrupt whatever fragile balance existed inside his head. Ethan lay there, bandaged and irritated, radiating the same hostile energy he always did when he felt cornered. He did not recognize me. Not really. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience that refused to go away, like paperwork he did not remember signing. When the nurse adjusted his IV, he snapped at her for pulling too hard. When Lucas tried to explain schedules, Ethan waved him off. But every time the door opened, his eyes flicked toward me, sharp and assessing, as if his body knew I belonged there, even if his mind did not. Chloe Bennett did not belong there, and yet she refused to leave. She appeared again before dawn, wearing a pale dress and a face full of suffering. She clutched coffee cups no one asked for and spoke in a trembling voice, narrating her own tragedy to anyone within range. She told nurses she was family. She told Lucas she was irreplaceable. When she saw Ethan awake, she rushed forward like she had rehearsed it in a mirror. "Ethan," she whispered, tears pooling instantly. "You really do not remember me?" He stared at her, unimpressed. "Should I?" The question sliced cleanly through the room. Chloe froze, then adjusted quickly, launching into a story about high school, first kisses, promises made under bleachers. She spoke as if memory itself would bend under the weight of her nostalgia. I watched her carefully, noting the pauses, the dramatic inhalations, the way she angled her face to catch the light. Ethan listened for exactly 10 seconds. Then he frowned. "You are very loud for someone I do not know," Chloe gasped, as if struck. "Ethan, please. I came back for you. I gave up everything." He blinked. "That sounds like a personal problem." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to stay silent. Chloe tried again, stepping closer, fingers brushing his sleeve. Ethan recoiled instantly, muscles tightening. He looked at her like she was something invasive. "Do not touch me," he said flatly. "I already told you. I lost my memory, not my judgment." Her tears wobbled, confused, unused to resistance. "You were not like this before," she whispered. Ethan snorted. "Then I must have improved." Lucas coughed, pretending to look busy. The nurse avoided eye contact. I stood there, heart pounding, watching the man who no longer remembered loving me dismantle a woman who claimed to be his past. But then he turned to me. "Excuse me," he said, irritation sharpening his tone. "Can you get me some water?" For a moment I did not move. My fingers curled slowly at my sides. The word he had chosen, the distance in his voice, landed harder than any insult Chloe had thrown at me. "I am not your nurse," I said calmly. Ethan squinted, clearly annoyed that I was arguing. "Then why are you standing there?" I took a step closer, close enough for him to smell my perfume, the one he used to bury his face in when he was tired. "Because I am your fiancé." The silence that followed was violent. Lucas dropped his tablet. Chloe sucked in a sharp breath, eyes flashing. Ethan stared at me, scanning my face with clinical detachment, like a stranger assessing evidence. "No," he said after a moment. "That is not possible." My chest tightened. "Why not?" He shrugged. "I do not like women like you." The words were familiar. Too familiar. Before my anger could surface, I heard myself laugh softly. It surprised everyone, including me. "That is funny," I said, "because you used to say the exact same thing, and then you fell anyway." Ethan looked unsettled, as if something did not line up. He opened his mouth, then closed it, frowning. I took that moment to turn away. "Do not worry," I said over my shoulder. "You do not have to remember me. We are done." I had barely taken 2 steps when something heavy hit the floor behind me. I turned around to see Ethan on his knees. Not slowly, not deliberately. He had dropped like gravity made the decision for him. The sound echoed, thick and humiliating. "Lucas froze." Chloe stared, mouth open. I felt my anger short-circuit, replaced by disbelief. Ethan looked down at himself, horrified, hands hovering awkwardly at his sides. "What just happened?" he muttered. His voice cracked when he looked up at me. "Why did I do that?" I crossed my arms. "Good question." He swallowed hard. "I am not someone who kneels." "You are," I replied. "Just not for everyone." He stared at his knees like they had betrayed him. It felt out to make. Something twisted painfully in my chest. Chloe recovered enough to rush forward. "Ethan, do not embarrass yourself for her. You are confused." Ethan shot her a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "And you are still here." He turned back to me, eyes dark, uncertain. "If we really dated," he said carefully, "prove it." I did not hesitate. I pulled out my phone and unlocked it, scrolling through years of messages, photos, trips, arguments, reconciliations. His face appeared again and again, laughing, scowling, sleeping beside me. His thumb hovered over the screen, tracing his own image like he did not trust it. "This is extensive," he muttered. "You were exhausting," I said flatly. Something flickered in his eyes. Not memory. Recognition. His phone had been destroyed in the accident, shattered beyond use. He borrowed mine and scrolled in silence, jaw tightening. Then he stopped suddenly and handed it back. "I need to call my parents," he said. I shook my head. "They are in the air." "Bad weather. No signal." He scoffed, clearly disliking being corrected, but his hand drifted away from the call button anyway. He pretended not to notice. I ordered food, more than necessary, because silence made everything worse. When it arrived, Ethan ate mechanically, then paused. Without thinking, He picked green onions out of his soup and set them aside. Then he slid the bowl toward me. His body went rigid. He stared at the bowl, then at me, then away. I do not like green onions, he said slowly. I know, I replied. I do. The room felt smaller after that. By morning, Chloe was gone. She left without saying goodbye. Dignity abandoned somewhere between her failed performance and Ethan's refusal. Ethan was discharged later that afternoon, bandages thick, temper intact. Outside the hospital, the city moved on, unaware that something fundamental had cracked. Ethan stood beside me, scanning the street, alert and defensive. He did not take my hand, but he positioned himself between me and everyone else. He might not remember loving me, but his instincts had already chosen a side, and I was not sure whether that should comfort me or scare me more. That was the lie I told myself while standing in front of the mirror, adjusting a black dress that fit too well for my mood. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed behind me, already dressed, already impatient. Since leaving the hospital, his memory had not returned, but his personality had sharpened. The amnesia stripped away politeness and left instinct, and his instinct was sharp, territorial, and irritable. Madeline Shaw's message still sat unread on my phone. She had written something about how I should not hover over Ethan now that he was vulnerable. The word vulnerable made my jaw tighten. Ethan was many things, but vulnerable was not one of them. If anything, he was more dangerous without memory, because he no longer bothered pretending. We arrived at the private room of the lounge just after sunset. Laughter spilled into the hallway, loud and artificial. As soon as we stepped inside, conversations paused. Eyes flicked to Ethan's bandages, then to me. Madeline noticed us immediately. She smiled too wide and walked over with practiced concern. "Brianna," she said, dragging my name like it tasted strange. "You really did not have to come. This is more of a guy's thing." I looked at her evenly. "Funny. You are not a guy." She laughed, waving a hand. "You know what I mean. Ethan needs space. Women should be independent, not clingy." Ethan tilted his head slowly. I recognized the look. It was the one he wore right before he ruined someone's night. "If you want independence," he said, voice calm and cutting, "try finding your own man to cling to. Stop borrowing mine." The room went quiet. Madeline's smile froze. "Ethan, I was joking." "So was I," he replied. "Do not take it personally." I felt something warm bloom in my chest, sharp and satisfying. Ethan took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders with an annoyed sigh. "It is cold," he muttered. "Do not dress like you want pneumonia." I rolled my eyes. "I am 28, not 80. "You will regret it at 80, he said flatly. People pretended to laugh, the tension loosening slightly. Drinks were poured. Music rose. I focused on eating, letting the noise wash over me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Madeline checking her phone again and again. Her fingers twitched like she was waiting for a cue. Halfway through the night, she stood abruptly, pretending to stumble. Water splashed toward Ethan's chest, missing him by inches. "Oh my God," she gasped loudly. "I am so sorry. I must be drunk." Ethan stared at her. "You were sitting 3 seats away." Ryan Cole rushed forward, apologizing, tugging Ethan toward the hallway to help clean up. He looked embarrassed, loyal, eager to smooth things over. Ethan followed him, irritated but compliant. As they disappeared, Madeline grabbed her phone and slipped out through another door. Something felt wrong. I waited 5 seconds, then 10. Then I stood up quietly and followed. The hallway was dim and carpeted, the sound of the party muffled behind me. I saw Madeline ahead, pushing open the door to a small side room. I slowed, stopping just short of the entrance. The door did not close completely. Inside, 3 people stood close together. Ethan, Madeline, and Chloe Bennett. Chloe wore a soft expression, eyes shining like she was performing for a camera. "Ethan," she said gently, "we finally have time to talk." My fingers curled slowly into my palm. She spoke about the past, about studying together, about promises. She talked like the years between had not existed. Madeline watched closely, ready to intervene. Ethan listened, arms crossed. When Chloe finished, he exhaled impatiently. "Are you done?" She blinked. "What?" You owe me money, he said bluntly. Medical bills. Emotional distress. Pick one. I accept electronic transfer. Madeline jumped in. Ethan, do not be cruel. Chloe gave up everything for you. He looked at her coldly. Did I ask her to? Chloe's eyes filled again. She launched into another story, this one about family debts and sacrifice, about how thinking of Ethan gave her strength. She said she could not live without him. Ethan laughed. Not loudly, not humorously. He laughed like someone watching a bad performance. You should consider therapy, he said. Or sleep. Or both. Madeline snapped. You are being heartless. Destiny clearly wants you two together. You do not even remember Brianna. You should end things now before it gets worse. That was when Ethan's expression changed. He turned to Madeline slowly. Who told you that? She hesitated. Too long. Because, he continued, voice low, you sound very invested for someone who claims to be a friend. Madeline lifted her chin. I am just giving advice. Ethan nodded once. Interesting. Does that advice usually include sending intimate photos to someone else's fiancé at midnight? The air vanished from the room. Chloe stared at Madeline, shock breaking through her composure. Madeline's face drained of color. That is a lie, she said weakly. Ethan shrugged. I keep receipts. I pushed the door open then, stepping fully into the room. Please, I said calmly, do not stop on my account. I am enjoying the show. All three turned to me. Madeline's eyes flashed with hatred. Chloe looked horrified. Ethan looked pleased. Ryan appeared in the doorway behind me, face pale, fists clenched. He had heard everything. His gaze locked onto Madeline, disbelief morphing into fury. I am done, he said hoarsely. I will not serve you anymore. Madeline slapped him. Chloe screamed. Hair flew. Voices rose. Security rushed in as the room dissolved into chaos. I stepped back, heart pounding, watching carefully. Chloe lunged at Madeline, accusations spilling out. Betrayal finally exposed. Years of fake loyalty collapsed in minutes. Later, outside, Ethan leaned against the wall, rubbing his pinky finger thoughtfully. You planned that, I said quietly. He glanced at me. I nudged things. You let them destroy each other. He smirked. They were eager. Back home, exhaustion settled over me like a weight. I went to shower, steam fogging my thoughts. When I returned, Ethan was already in my bed, arms behind his head, entirely unapologetic. I stared at him for 2 seconds. Then I kicked him off. He hit the floor with a startled curse. What is wrong with you? You do not sleep here, I said. Not after calling me a nurse. He scowled. This is my house. I smiled and handed him the deed. His shoulders slumped instantly. Later, lying in the dark, I felt his presence close again. Careful. Warm. He whispered apologies he did not remember learning. Outside, the city slept. Inside, the war had only just begun. By morning, the internet had already chosen sides, and it was never the side with context. A short video of Chloe kneeling in the amusement park looped endlessly on my phone, stripped of everything before and after. The caption painted her as a woman who sacrificed 7 years of youth, abandoned by a heartless man, and the woman who stole him. Ethan and I were reduced to villains in 30 seconds or less. Comments poured in, righteous and vicious. People loved a simple story, especially one with a woman crying on her knees. The truth tried to surface once or twice. It never stayed long. Each clarification post vanished within minutes, buried and erased. Someone was working overtime to control the narrative. Lucas came into the office late that afternoon, jaw tight, eyes avoiding mine. He did not need to speak. I already felt it in my bones. The partnership pulled out, he said finally. They signed with the competitor this morning. 6 months of work, late nights, contracts half ready, gone. The partner company was run by a woman who had survived a brutal divorce caused by infidelity. In her eyes, Ethan was now a liar, and I was the other woman. No explanation mattered. Pain recognized pain, even when it was misplaced. Ethan did not say a word at first. He just stood there, fists clenched, breathing slow and controlled. Then he grabbed his jacket. We are going to the police, he said. Now, at the station, the tone changed quickly. Surveillance footage, transaction records, deleted posts traced back to burner accounts, messages that did not align. Slowly, the pattern revealed itself. Chloe was not desperate. She was professional. She belonged to a group that specialized in manufactured scandals, fake affairs, viral humiliation, broken marriages, collapsed companies. They were paid well to destroy people from the inside out. This time, they had underestimated one thing. Ethan Wright did not soften under pressure. Arrest warrants went out within days. Accounts were seized. Names surfaced. Chloe disappeared from social media entirely. She would not reappear for a very long time. I walked out of the station lighter than I had felt in weeks. Ethan squeezed my hand at the crosswalk and promised dinner. He mentioned grilled fish, my favorite. The smell of it used to make me happy. That day, it made my stomach roll. Before I could speak, a black car tore across the street, engine screaming. I froze, mind empty. Ethan shouted my name and yanked me backward with brutal force. The impact was thunderous. Metal shrieked. The car flipped, slamming into a stone pillar. Through shattered glass, I saw Chloe. Blood streaked her face. Her eyes were wild, empty, unrecognizable. I did not feel fear, just shock. Then the world tilted and went dark. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed again, the irony not lost on me. Ethan sat beside me, eyes red, hands shaking. He fed me soup, wiped my mouth, held a bag when I vomited. He hovered like he was afraid to blink. A nurse explained it gently. 7 weeks pregnant. Early stage. Stress and shock. Ethan went very still. Then he laughed and cried at the same time, gripping the doctor's arm like an anchor. He kept repeating the same words. I am going to be a father. This is real. This is real. Chloe was arrested at the scene. The charges stacked fast. Attempted murder joined the list. This time, there would be no escape. My pregnancy pushed the wedding forward 1 week earlier. No hesitation. Ethan's parents finally arrived from overseas, exhausted and fierce. My parents drove through the night. 4 adults took control, efficiency replacing chaos. Ethan's mother pulled me aside and thanked me for standing my ground. She told me plainly that if Ethan ever crossed a line again, she would take my side without hesitation. Ethan protested. His father laughed and reminded him that fidelity was the only gift that mattered. The wedding was small and fast but warm. For a few hours, the world behaved, until it did not. While I was backstage removing my makeup, a young woman burst into the room, short hair, eyes burning. She accused Ethan of betrayal. She said they were childhood sweethearts. She said promises had been made. She demanded answers. I turned to Ethan, exhausted. Who is this now? He frowned, then said her name. Catherine Wright, his adopted sister. The girl laughed sharply, insisting adoption did not count, that they had no blood relation. That destiny mattered more. Ethan snapped. He roared her name, shut her down completely, and turned to me, panicked. He reminded me of our first date, of telling me about his adopted sister. I smiled. Oh, I said sweetly. So you remember our first date? Silence hit like a hammer. Catherine grinned and gave me a thumbs up before Ethan physically removed her and locked the door. Then he dropped to his knees again, this time intentionally. He confessed everything. His memory had returned days earlier during the investigation. Stress forced it back. He kept pretending because he was afraid. Afraid I would leave. Afraid I would never forgive him for the nurse comment. Afraid Chloe would flee before incriminating herself fully. I listened quietly. Then I told him he had already been caught. He muttered that he thought his performance was flawless. I made him sleep on the couch. In the morning, he was back beside me anyway, kissing my cheek, hand resting gently over my stomach. I sighed, accepting reality. I chose him, and I would make him earn me every single day.